Hi, good morning. We'll just kind of we want this to kind of be a really open conversation and dialogue. Whatever we seek at festivals or workshops, we really love the Q&A portion of it. So really want this to just feel like the conversation. Hopefully some others will kind of flow in and out as we're all joined together. But my name is Erica Arley. I'm a writer, director, cinematographer, also dabble in post-production. And I'm one half of Honeyhead Films, which is a female ignition German production company. We're based in Wilmington, North Carolina.
It's really good to be back at Tryon. Erica and I have been educators here for the past 4 years. And in 2018, our second short film, our first film didn't get into any festivals. So our very second short film screened at Tryon. And it's like a really fun full circle moment to be back. And last night we screened our first feature film for Imaging. Did anybody see it? Or is anybody at the cool? Awesome. We'd love to talk about that process. I want to say that we're just an open book, and the way that we approach cinema is from a really grassroots perspective. And Erica and I have been invited to speak at a lot of festivals to help lift the veil for filmmakers who, at any stage of the process, because we've been through, enough up to this point, and we're always passionate about making sure that people feel like they can do anything that we've ever done as well. And so we're an open book for you. I would love to start off our conversation with maybe an audience poll. We'd like to know who's in the room and who's curious about what kinds of things. So how many people have a film in the festival? Nice. How many people are interested in making their first film and have ever done that before? Okay, cool. Anybody in the process of developing a feature? Cool. Some of you. Awesome. Cool. Anybody curious about financing? Cool. What it called? Distribution, yeah, all those things. Cool. Um, what else should we ask them to kind of gauge where to begin?
Um, I We'll do a few more raising up the hands just to get to know you all a little bit. But any screenwriters? What about directors? Cinematographers, actors, editors. We can't forget you.
Everybody's raising their hands multiple times.
Yeah, that sometimes I like to track that. It's like, yeah. How many people would consider themselves a multi-hyphenate creative like you wear all the hats? Okay, great. We're in good company here, so that's great to know. That's kind of like Christy said, that's sort of the indie film way. You kind of have to get really good at something and know, I guess a little about a lot of things or a lot about a lot of things. So we could probably just get going talking about Imaging and kind of where it came from and like deciding to make your first feature film, perhaps.
Yeah, I always love to just break the ice by letting everyone know our origin story. Some of you have probably heard us talk about this, but any of you like creative partners? I know you two make films together. Is anybody here with their film producing partner? Anybody looking for one? Like you feel like you need somebody to lean on? We met on Craigslist in 2015, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
In November. So we're coming up on our decade anniversary of Craigslist. Erica was casting her very first short film, and she put out a casting call, and it was like a low dot of my career. And I had just moved to Wilmington, as did she. And I don't know why I was looking on Craigslist for an acting job. I don't recommend it, but the universe had a really big plan for us, I think. And part of our story has really just been this intuitive, energetic feeling of following our gut and trusting these kind of magical yeses from the universe and creating opportunities for ourselves and other people. And we met, and it's kind of like the origin of Honeyhead began because there just weren't enough interesting characters for women that each of us were offered or ever really encountered. And Erica was the first female screenwriter and director that I had ever worked with. And it really changed my life in a huge way to read a script that felt authentic and dialogue written for women that felt like something I'll actually say. And I remember how good that felt and wanting to continue working together. So we just started producing movies like right off the bat, even though we didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. Done some, I think, using the term self-taught, we've started to kind of back away from that because um, in making our first feature, we noticed that it kind of made people go, like investors, they were a little bit wary of that. But I also love that, the kind of no film school model of making projects. And I think that's why we became serial short filmmakers at the beginning of, our friendship and our careers together. We had other part-time jobs, we weren't paying the bills as a production company yet. So we just would go out on weekends and be creative, and we would make films for $10 or sometimes a couple $1,000. It just depended on what resources we had and who we were collaborating with. Um, so I also kind of want to put that out there is that like you can always just start and learn by doing. Um, Even if you want to learn a new skill set, it's just go out there and try. We definitely failed forward a lot in the beginning of our careers. Every time we were on set, it was like we learned something new, but something that was consistent throughout all the short film sets that we worked on and films we produced was the reaction that the crew had to working with us. And even on our very first short that we ever, not the film where we met, but the first film we produced together, the one that got into no film festivals, we had a great time. Uh, we were wrapping out and it had been a weekend shoot. I think we had like a $75 stipend for our crew for the weekend. I think it was like a $2,000 budget we had set for the project. And no one was working at that time. It was kind of a low point in North Carolina's incentive program. So all of our friends that normally work on crew up on studio shows were out of work. And so everyone was down to come out for a weekend and for a very small, amount of money, work with us and make film. And at Wrap, we're handing out our tiny checks, and everyone was like, "This is the best set I've ever been on. This was the most fun. I felt the most cared for." And we were like, "Wow, if we don't really know what we're doing, we're just treating people the way as actors or as other crew, as producers now, like in a place of leadership, we're just treating people the way we would want to be treated, and trying not to do things that we saw weren't working on other sets, big studio sets, where there's like a very rigorous top-down hierarchy, and people are always afraid of like you have the PAs that are shaking in their shoes because they're afraid if they get the coffee wrong they're going to get fired. It's like that was totally not the energy we wanted to bring to our sets. And there was obviously a need for that and a gap for that in the industry. So that kind of became part of the mission of Honeyhead was the value that every person brings to a project, from an executive producer and a director and a cinematographer to a runner to a PA, to your camera assistants and things like that. So just wanting to make sure that people all felt valued. And we didn't know it, but at the time, but creating that set culture is what set us up to make our first feature film on a micro budget.
Yeah, all those lessons that we learned on the way, which we made 17 shorts before we ventured to make our first feature, but took all of that along with us. And in turn, I think the feature was a huge success because it's it's one of those things where it's a miracle to make any film happen, and especially a feature. An indie feature is so hard. But if you look at the final product and you feel proud of it, and it gets international distribution, it wins awards, and people in the audience really care about it, and then you can also truly in your heart say that everyone that worked on the project also had a great time making it. I think that's like the biggest success you can have as an indie filmmaker. Um, I see a lot of nodding. You all probably want to do that, right? Like it fills your cup because there's going to be so many bumps along the road as you're making feature films, and you're, each project is like a stepping stone to the next. So as indie filmmakers, it can be really daunting. You're trying to bite off more than you can chew. Just starting small is okay, and know that you're not behind just because you look around in the room and everybody else is at a different point in their career, regardless if they're age or when they started, the market that they work in. These kind of like imposter syndrome monsters that can sit on your shoulder and tell you you're not good enough or you're not far enough in your career. You have to really think about other facets than just what's on screen. I think at least that's my perspective. And we were talking yesterday, just handily together, about the things that fill our cup as producers, because there are going to be these like lulls where you're in development hell and it just takes so long to gain financing, and you have to be able to tap into what really matters and what really sparks and fuels you, not just as like a creative person putting things on the screen, but as a community builder. Um, I would love to open it up for just any kind of question. If anybody's like got something they want to chew on, because this is a really, I want this to be an organic talk back and less of us just, rambling on about our philosophy, unless I was on a shoot. But yeah, Eugene.
So whenever y'all first met on Craigslist, what was the spark that like brought y'all together so much where you're like, oh, I want this person to be my like partner in the long run in film? Like what did you see in each other that made you real care about like this person or someone like saw them as who they are?
Um, Definitely a shared perspective and philosophy about what we wanted to do in the film industry and putting female stories on camera and authentically, and not just putting women in front of the camera as kind of, a token of like, it's a female led this, but like everyone behind the camera, it's not female led behind the camera. So really wanting to champion that female perspectives both in front of and behind the lens, and just tell stories that we wanted to see. I think we've had a great, I think, evolution in our industry as far as what people see on screen. But at that time, even 10 years ago, we grew up with like the CW of it all. And like, One Tree Hill, where like, it's like a high schooler looks like a 26-year-old because they are a 26-year-old. And as like a high schooler with braces, you're watching this and you're like, why don't I look like that? I don't know. Why don't I look like I'm 26 when I'm 16? And there's kind of a damage that it can be done to a young person's psyche when they're not showing representation. Uh, you know, Whether that's culturally, racially, gender, anything. So I think that was part of what was important to us, was creating authentic stories in order to fuel that representation, so that the generation of filmmakers coming up behind us would be more diverse. Um, so that was a big thing that we can now put a pin in, and say this is definitely what it was. At the time, I feel like it was just a feeling and that we liked each other as people, and that there was never any judgment because we were working together,
I want to add to that. Beyond Eric just being a tremendously talented writer, which is just such a gift as an actor turned producer, actress producer. To be able to get stories off the ground that you're excited to work in is just so much more fulfilling to me than waiting around for the casting call from my agent, because I'll be really honest, it's very rare that I get excited about a script that doesn't come from Erica, which sounds just so picky, but it's like when the bar is set so high, it's hard to get excited about like the One Tree Hill kind of, under five that comes in or whatever it is for the Southeast. So that was one thing for me, was just the opportunity to collaborate with someone I thought was incredible and talented, and then to use my skills that I just naturally had as a young gal. Like as like a 10-year-old, I was like the in the backyard with my cousins doing the plays for like the neighborhood, and he's like organizing costumes and the schedule and making sure everyone showed up for rehearsal, just doing all these kind of producer tasks. I didn't know it was being a producer at 10 years old, but being able to use those skill sets to support projects, and then having a partner that I could trust and knew it was going to turn out great, from a creative perspective. We share really different skills. While we do share a vision and, what Erica talked about is like our brand as filmmakers, we're not good at the same things. And so I encourage all of you, especially if you're moving into the feature film escape, these two ladies, they're producing partners and I always tell people, find your Eric Hare, find your Christy, because you cannot do it alone. I would not venture to try to do it alone. I mean, you probably can. People will tell you that they do, but it would be very isolating to work without you and to not have somebody to balance the things that I'm just not naturally gifted at. And so finding the end to your name, it's like an important thing for filmmakers to look for someone who complements your skill set, who you can help bolster their career. And it feels symbiotic and it doesn't feel like an obligation or I know you were talking yesterday, it's kind of like hierarchy, something reporting to you. That can be challenging, so really finding someone you feel is your equal, but they creatively balance with you is crucial. I would use film festivals and networking opportunities like this. Maybe check Craigslist. You never know what it's gonna be out there. Yeah.
But that's what Craigslist looks like now, 10 years on. I don't know. Might be a scary, dark place too.
That was a great question. Is that what you
Yes, that would be great.
Who else has something you want to talk about? Yeah.
I want to know for imaging and the short that came before. How did you guys like? That's maybe a question more for the DP, but like, how did you guys develop the look of those? Because they're both very similar and very, I thought, striking.
Thank you.
The short film For Every Breath. And okay. That, thank you for that question. I love questions about cinematography and aesthetic. Natural light, like not shooting totally natural light, but wanting to create a film that reinforced natural light and looked very organic from a technical perspective was really important to me for A Song for Imaging. And finding our cinematographer, Nick True, he actually reached out to us after he saw the short film that became A Song for Imaging. We didn't make a short film as a proof of concept. That's something that filmmakers will do nowadays. But we made a short film about the two sisters in the movie and then never thought we would touch the story ever again. But it resonated so well with audiences like once in Tryon and other festivals that we decided when we were going through our first feature, that would be the one. And our cinematographer actually saw the short film at a festival, which is kind of embarrassing to think about now.
It did not have a look. It wasn't staged.
It was very much no budget, like, it was just not, it was not the same. It was just definitely still learning as we were going, kind of playing as we fly. So, but he said, if you ever make this a feature, I would like to shoot it. He was an aspiring cinematographer, and A Song for Imaging was his first feature as a DP.
It was his first narrative film at all. He just shot music videos before that. Yeah.
But I loved his eye, and we shared an eye as far as his photography and, the music videos and other projects he had shot. And I was like, I love this. And I wanted to start 10 steps ahead in the process. Because as indie filmmakers, you have to move fast and you can't always afford to pay people a lot for prep and things. So I wanted to find someone who already shared a vision with me. And I could tell through his photography and cinematography that we shared a taste. And from there kind of built a relationship. And he also really likes natural light. He's kind of, a geek for the sun the way that I am. And when we would go on location scouts, we would walk into a room and sometimes it was the right time of day in the room. And we would both just be like, looks great right now. What time of day is it? Let's make sure that we schedule to shoot this scene in this room at this time because we don't have to do anything. So kind of this like bare bones idea of what is the sun doing and how can we just play with that and reinforce that and maybe bounce something and fill or create a little bit of a backlight or like add a little for an eye light. It was like very minimal from a G&E standpoint. And he had come up in the industry as a gaffer, not through the camera department, through the G&E department. So his kind of respect for the sun, I shared that also as a cinematographer. So that was really important to us. And the fact that the idea that any frame in the film could be a photograph. That's kind of how we were approaching it, and kind of creating these tableaus, but also leaning into movement was important, and he was excited about that as well. And since Nick also shot For Every Breath, the short film, you kind of see that relationship carried through. Um, and there's already just a language between he and I as collaborators where we don't have to, there's a lot of that goes unspoken because we just share a love for an aesthetic. So wanting to make sure that we worked with a cinematographer as well who wasn't gonna need all the toys, you know, bring all, I need this light and that light and this thing and that thing, and then suddenly like the majority of our budget is for camera G&E. You know, we wanted someone who could like get down with the indie grits of it all and actually enjoyed working in that kind of aesthetic and environment. So that's something that I really, Nick always goes to, what can we do with just some grippage first? And then do we need to add a light? You know, and then what light is that? And how can we make sure it doesn't get into like a scary thing where there's like 10 lights and like a flag city, and then suddenly you end up with like how it would have looked if the sun just came through the window anyway, you know? So
Yeah, and
that was really
important time.
Yeah.
That's not something you have as any filmmakers. I want to take this opportunity to kind of pivot and talk a little bit about stretching your budget because and things that you're touching on resonate with that part. And I'm always thinking about the money. She's thinking about, you know, the look. And it's like, how can you marry those two things as a producer and the director? There are going to be concessions you have to make, but you really have to start with this top-down leadership and think about in indie films, think about who you're bringing in to make those creative decisions. If maybe you're bringing in a director, you know, maybe you are the director and you're the producer and you're looking for a DP like Erica said, or a gaffer. People need to have chemistry together. One of my favorite things as a producer is crewing up and thinking about who's going to get along with who and what's your style, what's your filmmaking style, how will that complement this, and what's the overall scope of this project? What can this project afford? How much ego can this project afford? That's like a big thing I think about. I probably don't say it out loud a lot, maybe to you, but it's like, is this like salty gaffer person who's going to poo-poo our tiny little screener van? Because they're not the buy for this $200,000 movie. Maybe we can have them on the $5 million film and they do great work, but you need people who are going to get excited about the challenge creatively, and that protects your creative space as a producer or director. The worst thing you can do is have people who, you know, how to resonate this long, who are just going to put their nose up at the resources that you're able to provide for them your first time out or your second time out. So interview these people, work with them on shorts if you can, test the relationship. We didn't work with Nick before this, but we definitely had creative outings together, right? We would like go do character photo shoots together and go on scouts and things and just spend time together. You know, having a friendship I think is really valuable with people that you trust. Talking about what camera package, the lighting package, making sure that you're, as producers, you're really talking through the logistics with people, setting the expectation. You know, our film, both films were non-union crew, non-union cast. And a lot of the crew comes, you know, from my Aussie background and they work on sets like that. But we just let them know right off the cuff, you know, this is a gaffer grip and you know, it's like a 4-person G&E team and 2 of the people underneath you are learning. So that's your team. That's what you're signing up for. Are you down for that? You're going to be driving the group truck on company moves. Are you down for that? There's no transportation department, you know, just setting the tone. So when they get to set, they're not expecting to have all the bells and whistles if your budget can't afford that. And as you grow and scale, it's great if like the first film goes well to bring those people on and then give them more tools to play with. But creatively, they have to get excited about the challenge. Otherwise, it's going to just create a friction that it makes it really difficult. It's like a suffocating kind of energy when, you know, people just have a chip on their shoulder. So you're ever coming, you know, from out of town, like I'm just gonna direct this to you too. They're producing a feature in South Carolina and are not from here. Don't necessarily know the department heads. I would interview producers and talk to people like me or, people in South Carolina and get their genuine recommendations for like the vibe check, not just the resume. We're big on hiring over potential over proof. So it's like, you have a good energy, what have you done? Yes, you have experience, but like, what's your heart going to bring to the project? And that time and time again has just benefited us as filmmakers. You have anything you want to add to that?
Oh, I echo everything you said, and yeah, just about testing relationships. And then, yeah, I mean, going back to aesthetic, just, I said this a little in the Q&A last night, but just making sure that um, when you get the tools and you get the camera, you get the lenses. We tested a lot of lenses for a song for Imogene, because we had a set of anamorphic lenses we were going to shoot on, but they weren't fast enough for the natural light setup. And then we were gifted a set of beautiful HH photography lenses that have been rehoused for cinema, and so we were able to use those, and they were much faster. So it worked really well for us. And so I think just when you're thinking about that, thinking about like what you can give a really talented person, um, you know, a nice camera body and some okay lenses, and there's only so much you can do. Or if you like get a really great cinematographer with a great camera and a great lens package, but then you don't, give enough resources to your art department, it's like there has to be a meet in the middle somewhere. So also just looking out for that when you're crewing up, to make sure that the whole vision can come together in this way, and you're not just relying on like a really nice camera or really nice lenses to do the whole job for you.
With the song for Imogene, we had a lot of interns on our set who had never been on a professional film set before, and they were a huge part of making it possible because they're unpaid interns who are giving their summer to our production. And every department head on that feature, it was also their first feature. So there was this kind of camaraderie of like ownership where everybody, it was like their first time out and their big shot to show that they could do it. And there was a lot of like mentorship. That's something that we're big on. And I would not poo-poo on the interns or think that having people learn on your set is not a good environment, because those people are going to try really hard and they're going to show up and give it their all. And you're in turn giving them something really valuable, and you're kickstarting a career in an amazing way. So if you ever feel really strapped in your budget, don't sleep on the interns. Like, don't sleep on the apprenticeships, like people who really are trying to get their foot in the door. As long as you have someone in a leadership position who is willing to teach while doing, it could be an incredible model to stretch your dollar. Feed people well, obviously, but if you can't afford to pay full rates, like, look to local schools and try to form those partnerships before you're ready to go into production. We've had interns just as a production company since 2017, and so we're set up with the universities. But A Song for Imogene, when I think about the crew, a lot of it was our little baby bees running around the honey hive, and helping out. They were crafty, they were, wardrobe, they were scripty, they were assistant editors, things like that typically you wouldn't give an intern that kind of responsibility, but they really did rise to the occasion and help make the production costly.
And then, yeah, I love everything y'all are saying, and it's making me so excited. As I fall in love with producing, there's such a effort to demystify it. And I just wonder if you have any advice for people who are working on their first feature, especially for those producers who are looking for more specificity and looking for that education of what exactly is producing, because there's not a lot of information out there other than finding a mentor or finding the right producer who can guide you through producing.
Yeah, I hear you on like the opaqueness of producing. I think the first 10 years of my career, I was just an actress and I didn't even know what producers did. I'll be honest. I was like, I couldn't tell you all the things that go into it. After basically teaching ourselves to do it, and then the feature is like its own thing, right? Like its own battle. A short is one thing. With the feature, what I would recommend to you, I don't even really know how to approach your question. You're looking for like specifics. It's so
Or anything general. It just I'm glad it's something that you also come up against.
it's one of those things that you just have to do it to know everything that goes into it. And part of what made it possible for us, I remember like a specific moment where we brought on Andrea and Michelle, our producing partners, to the project, and Erica was really able to focus in her lane and kind of pull away from producing the project and really think about, you know, tightening the script and prepping her scouts and doing all of the directing things and not having to focus so much and myself leading the feature. It's hard to wear the actor's hat and producer hat. So finding other people, and I didn't have like a slate producer, so it was really great. Make sure people that you're surrounding yourself with specialize. Like one of our producers, Michelle, was really good with insurance and equipment lists, where I was the timid and making sure we have, you know, every bit of griffage accounting for. Like I didn't want to have that responsibility on my plate. I'm more the diplomatic like relationship person, or the, you know, who I went out and recruited the crew and helped with locations and the kind of like more practical things. That's what I was drawn to. And Andrea handled budgeting. But through that process, I learned so much about budgeting that when we wrapped Imaging, I was ready to line produce another feature that was like $1 million feature, you know? So going from Imaging, learning how to manage that through watching somebody else do it, you take these bits, but you really do have to witness them firsthand or just do them yourself. And like Erica said, kind of fail forward. They play me to really like fall on her face tremendously. I mean, knock on wood, but nothing terrible happened. Like nothing, there wasn't like some big accident that I learned from. You know, it was like taking care and making sure that, I mean, for us, it was the women you brought on were detail oriented, you know, have responsibility to step in when we couldn't do it. I think they had bells, but really you have to like be in it for the long haul and know that's going to be exhausting. That at the end of the day, your job as a producer is to make sure the movie happens completely and fully, and then take it all the way through the end. Like I'm still producing Imaging. We're still marketing the film. You know, it's out for distribution. I'm like, it never ends. It's like it's your baby from beginning to end. So you're the shepherd and the guide, but it's like so much more detailed than just this kind of, I'm sitting at the view village, like watching all this work happen. You're solving problems, putting out fires. I think we should have coffee and like talk way more in depth, because I could just go on and on about the minutia. Do you have thoughts about like like what changed for you? Because I think about the producing team, and I think there was like a clear line where it was like Erica's now directing, and you got to step away from having to think about putting it all together like that.
That was like day one on set, and I remember walking on and I was thinking about where was Crafty going to be set up, and I was like producing as I was walking on to day one of set, and I was like, Lena, I just need to direct, you know. And that was such a cool feeling. That's the first time I ever had that feeling. All the other, I think any indie filmmaker in here knows that, like, even if you're the writer director of a film, you're also the producer, and sometimes you're the AE, or don't direct in DIT. I did it. It's so deep. It just takes your whole brain. And then you don't do a good job directing. You're like, I don't even remember that shot in post. But there's so much that you're doing, you know, to make your project happen. So I think, again, just figuring out what are those hats that I want to take off. Am I still doing the budget and I'm also the director? Then I probably need to find a line producer. You know, it's like all of these things that I remember. The pin drop for me when I realized that there was more than one or two producers on a film. You know, that was something that I think we kind of learned, or at least I learned through Imaging. I was like, oh, you mean that there's different categories of a producer. It's not just like the producer that does, you know, the UPM's job and the LP's job, you know what I mean? And it's also like creatively producing and doing all of that. I remember talking to Christy about, for the next project, we want to delegate, you know, do a better job delegating from the jump, you know, so that you're not trying to also bring people in and ingest them into kind of like your process like 1 week out from production and they're like, I kind of wish that I had been able to like create a system that worked for my process with this, but I'll kind of jump into yours that's already kind of like on its way to being built. So I think making sure that you're creating those relationships and bringing people on early in the process. Because producers, should be there from development in a way, you know what I mean? And so oftentimes people bring on early, you know, an actor or a DP, and that's good too. But you also have to be thinking about your producing team because you need those people to be in the process from the infancy of a project. It really, really helps create efficiencies later down the line.
It can be really hard to find those people because obviously with indie films, it's not like you have a development budget that you can just start paying people. And that's part of like one of the challenges that make it special is because when you find people who have other ulterior motives that are positive to want to be attached to your project, those are probably the right people that you want to have them on. We always talk about your brand as filmmakers and standing for something more than just your creative work. I know there's people in the room that I've known for a couple of years now that I really care about and looking at you as filmmakers. I love your work, but like I love you as people and who you are. And if you called me and you needed something, I would do anything for you because you're good people. And you have to be good people in indie film to have producer want to attach to your project and help you, shepherd your story. Like who you are as people is part of your brand and your identity. And it really is the key to like unlocking passion and unlocking relationships that are going to help move your projects along. And so, I mean, the biggest piece of advice is just be a good person, treat people well. But the women who came on to help us make our feature, they also remain here for feature. They just worked in corporate or they worked, for a perfection company where they didn't get their creative muscles scratched or they didn't, necessarily get to tell female-led stories. And so we were able to kind of offer them something that they just wanted to fill their cup doing. And they believed in the story and this personal deep down. And so looking for your creative partner can feel really opaque, but maybe think about what is your film or what is your branding, what's your story about, and how can I find someone who believes in that and is passionate about that, and then we can make something together. And it's not like you're the queen of the castle and you're delegating down to people. That's definitely not the vibe. And it also puts a lot of stress on you to always constantly have to move the machine. So you want to have people who are in it with you, that are like pushing the boulder up the hill because it's going to take years of work. And I remember telling Michelle, like, we don't want to do this without you, and no pressure, but like, we couldn't imagine making this first movie without you. And that's kind of one of the years it gets.
Yeah. And also having those people is what allowed Chrissy and I think about the fact that our feature was from a budget standpoint partially crowdfunded and then partially equity, and then a lot of in-kind donations. So our entire camera and G&E package was a donation from a local production house. So kind of putting all our locations were donated. So kind of putting together our micro budget that way. I mean, Chrissy ran our Seed and Spark crowdfunding campaign, and I don't think like without an extra producing team behind the project to be there, that would have been possible. I mean, if you're like, that's a full-time job, y'all. I mean, this is not a talk about Seed and Spark because that would be like a 2-hour discussion, but that if you are going to endeavor to do that, prepare for that to be your full-time job, and so having team members in place that can be there to keep the machine running so that you can do that work, if that's the route that you take, is really important. And because that Seed and Spark campaign is what drew our equity investors to the project and our angel investors. So that's something that's really important, is to remember that, while you're also making the machine work behind the scenes, having that grant that's out there doing work for you as well is also equally important. So you need a lot of team members, people that just want to operate the machine behind the scenes and people that are comfortable being the face of a brand of a film. Yeah.
What was the process of creating your production company?
The process of feeding our own production company. Is there a right answer to this? Should we just tell it that?
We were kind of in this serial short filmmaking stage of our careers where we had other jobs. Decided that we did want to be filmmakers and produce content, video content or film content full time. So we just were at a point in our lives where we didn't have families yet, and we're both moms now and things like that. But we were young, we were living together, and so we were keeping our expenses low, and we agreed we could kind of make this jump and like quit the day jobs and make the jump into making commercial content. I think that I don't want to be misleading and say that we just get paid to make movies all the time. There is another part of Honeyhead that, was a commercial producing entity for a long time, and we still do client work, kind of like brand storytelling work. But the thing that attracted people to us and why that worked is because we were filmmakers, and we always brought a filmmaking and a narrative style to the commercial content we produced. Originally, there was a third founder of Honeyhead, a dear friend of ours who's still we're very close with, and so that was also part of our journey, was kind of figuring out how all of that worked. And eventually, she decided, she was like, I don't know if this is for me. I kind of tried it, I'm not sure if it's for me. And Christy and I were like, this is definitely the thing we want to do. So you kind of just have to take that big deep dive and feel like you're in a place as a person to do that, and as an entrepreneur. And filmmaking is a business. You have to we kind of took ourselves to business school again by doing it. Like, I think our first commercial, we charged our client like $300. And I say the third founder because the conversation was that we each were going to make $100, and it felt like a lot of money to get paid $100 to make a video for someone, at the time. Because I think we had some imposter syndrome, and we didn't really have like a portfolio of work, and so as we grew that portfolio, we raised our rates, and we were able to kind of create a sustainable business arm of Honeyhead that was able to support our creative endeavors, and always with the goal though to outgrow that. So I say that the commercial and the brand and the client of it all, with a level of don't get mired there, and allow yourself to lose sight of the fact that you started doing this because you want to be a filmmaker. That part of a company, that part of our company is always feeding the creative part. We do that so that we can go be creative, and so that we can develop these projects and sit through the development struggle, with films. And then eventually the goal is to just be making films, full time, but it takes a while. So I would say, when you're starting a production company, it's okay to do some things for free, or for a low rate to build your portfolio. That's what we did.
To build your brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to interrupt, but I always like to remind people that we didn't just figure it out and like form an LLC 10 years ago and say, we're just going to do this. It was like, we made a film, our crew loved the experience, and we were like, we're going to do this again. We need a name. So we named our company. It wasn't like real. It was just us making narrative films for like very little money for a while. And then it became something that other people saw value in, and they started to pay us to do things for them, whether that was help produce their work. Some people would come to us, filmmaker friends, and they'd say, I need the honey. I need the honey. And we're like, what does that mean? Right? So they wanted us to bring the vibes to their set, to bring the organization, to DP, to produce, to AD, to, get the crew together and make it happen, make it a success, and make sure people had a good time making the film. So we brought the honey. We started being paid to bring the honey. And then we're like, should we become an LLC and like do this, not split this check freeways thing, And so that came like 5 years later. I think it was 2020, the year we started writing in the G. Yeah, we became a real LLC. So I wouldn't feel pressure to incorporate your production company right away. It's like money you have to pay the comment, I'm not telling you not to pay your taxes, but like the what's it called? The annual report fee. Like, just things like that when you're investing in gear, like all of this is like hard. So don't make it more hard than it needs to be. But like I was saying at the beginning of the talk, the universe will tell you when it's time. I'm a big proponent of trusting your gut and letting the process organically lead you where you're gonna go. We did a ton of music videos, a bunch of short films, all kind of like learning our way through the narrative scope before we ventured out to make our first feature. And after that was a success, people would come to us as a production service company with like $1.5 million. That's a lot of money. And they say, here's this budget. I need the honey. Make this movie happen. And that became a business model for us where we could flow the money through Honeyhead, pay other people well. Now it's not imaging. We're not asking for favors. We get to bring all those people back on and now pay them their full rates to do their union project. And you're learning all the while. I couldn't imagine 10 years ago someone telling me they wanted me to produce $1 million movie. I would have like cried. I would be like, what? What's a producer? So it's all baby steps. Don't bite off more than you feel you can chew. Definitely do things that scare you, but know that it's going to be like incremental. The boulder at the hill is like a real thing, but I wouldn't try to jump in the deep end if you're not sure. We did also attend like a 16-week accelerator program for minority business owners. That was pretty crucial around 2020, I think.
Yeah.
And that was a gift from us. Some people in our community, our business community, saw what we were doing and were like, I want you to be a part of this program. We want to help accelerate what you're doing in Wilmington. And that was a big part of our success when we were raising capital for Imogene, or even now we're financing a $5 million movie. And those business connections have proved to be very fruitful. But I wouldn't have thought myself, Erica, we should sign up for a business accelerator. It's like, that just found us. Those kind of things, when they knock on your door, you should say yes to them, because it's life, it's the universe, it's the higher power telling you like, here's your next piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
Don't try to like lay out the groundwork yourself and have the master plan. I think that filmmaking is way too opaque in the process, and it's quite, what do they say at the bank when we need a loan? They say it's a speculative energy art industry. It's like it's so speculative, and so I would take small baby steps and just know that you'll know in your heart like what's the next thing to do, and asking other people and being really open about, I don't know everything. What can I learn from you? I mean, just like today, people are an open book, and that goes both ways.
And it's fine to produce other things that aren't filmed. That's not a failure. I think I know a lot of people are interested in the financing of it all. So don't sleep on your business community. Your money, especially in financing as a first-time filmmaker, it's probably not going to be from like a pitch to some executive somewhere, especially if you're doing it locally. If you're an unknown director who don't have any main talent, they might like give you the 5 minutes, but it's probably not going to be, a slam dunk right away, so it's probably from like local business communities, people that are independently wealthy that want to support the arts and things like that. So through our business connections and through, being creative entrepreneurs in a community and getting to know our business community in Wilmington, that's where we made a lot of connections that have had driven and a big part of the Honeyhead film ship. So we couldn't have even known that at the time, but get invested in the small business community, get invested in knowing people that aren't necessarily just filmmakers, just in the film industry. Get other people excited about what you're doing, and people that maybe, are, into venture capital and they want to take a chance on a film and kind of build your strategy and, prepare your pitch and know what you're talking about, know how to talk about your film like it's a business, because that's what it is. You're basically a startup and you're pitching to venture capital. So know how to do that and how to talk about it, but definitely don't sleep on the business community that is in, each of your, local cities and things like that. Yeah.
My whole career I've been producing it with other people's money. And now I have a feature. and I'm in that dance where I'm trying to entice a really good lead. Am I invested? Do I have financing? No. The lead that the reps want to know if I have financing, but investors want to know if I have leads. I have to deal with that casualty to dance of not lying to one party to entice the other and, create that cohesive pill.
I'm glad you asked that question. We're in it with you right now. We're finding success. Just to kind of catch everybody up to speed with what he's talking about. We did not do that on Imaging. If anybody saw the movie, you probably don't recognize any of the actors in it because they're mostly unknown, sometimes first-time actors. On our second film, that's not the strategy that we're deploying. We're in the same boat with you. Faces unlocked equity, sometimes pre-sales. And so how do you go about raising capital before you have the attachment? It really is this incredible catch-22. For the past year, it's been about a year since, Dark Fired. So at the Atlanta Film Festival, we were touring a song for Imaging, and we met some executive producers who specialize in raising that first-time capital. It's the hardest talent investment money to find. And because they saw our film and they saw what we were able to do with such a small, modest budget, they got on board right away and got excited about our next project. And they went to their community for us. So they're almost like brokers, like financier brokers who found different investors at different levels that were interested in bringing a percentage of the full offer. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your budget?
It's about 15 million.
Okay. So pretty significant amount you're probably raising for is it like one actor that you're trying to bring home? Two actors. Okay. So probably at least 7 figures in what you're offered to them, right? Are you considering pay to play offers? Or are you trying to just,
We're looking in there.
yeah. What we
Be maybe distributors first, but they're like somewhere in the middle of that process.
So there'll be sales agents that are sales companies. I don't know if you've spoken to any of them, and they also want your talent attached first. But the sales companies can take a talent attachment, whether that's an LOI or like an actual contract, having actors set versus having them attached. It's like a little bit different minutia there. Set carries more weight because they're contractually obligated to do your shoot, in this production window. But you're putting investors' money at risk, So my advice to you is to take 20% of whatever you have budgeted to attach. Let's just start with one main because 20% of $1 million or more is still a lot of money.
And the one will probably get the 7. So
Yeah, exactly that. So my advice to you would be to start by finding investors who believe enough in your project and the vision and are excited about the actors that you're going out to. I don't know who it is. Like, people can get behind like, oh, it's Kevin Costner. Like, I want to be a part of having Kevin Costner come into a project. That's exciting to them. There's like different types of investors who are excited about film finance for different reasons. And when you're going out to the talent investment of it all, it's good to look for those people who are just sort of wooed about Hollywood, the kind of like glamour of it all. Offer things to these people, obviously a return at green light, so they'll get their investment back plus a 20% preferred return at green light. But you're going to be raising 20% of what you're offering. Let's say Kevin Costner. So let's say it's $1 million for him to star in your film. You need to find 20% of that to put in escrow so that you'll be able to send a pay to play deal to him, to Kevin Costner, and say, yes, I have the money here in the bank. Their management then takes you seriously. They'll raise the project. And if he's interested, he's going to contractually, there's going to be a lot of money. You got to pay to a lawyer to get everything papered up. But then you're legally allowed to go out, use his name for packaging at one of the major festivals at Cannes, at Berlin, and pre-sell the film. That would be the way to unlock equity. And I don't know what kind of genre you're making, but pre-sales are becoming less and less likely to go through and actually materialize unless it's like a horror film, an action film, or maybe like a suspense thriller. So hopefully you're raising funds for something like that. Otherwise, there's like a million ways to skin a cat, but that's the route that we're going right now. And we were able to, through the festival circuit and through our business community, and different people, people that would surprise you too, came on board to raise 20% of what we were offering our talent. And we just closed like last week. So it's super exciting to get there, to finally be able to have it in the bank, to start making those offers. And we're going to be doing that the 1st of November. But it can happen. And there are people, what I was going to say is offer them they get their money back at green light. So they're like a special kind of equity investor. That means their money's less at risk because it doesn't matter if the film gets made at all. It's just when you raise the rest of the capital, they get a return at green light, and then you give them perks. Like they get a set visit, they get to come to the premiere, they get to go to a cast event with Kevin Costner, and that's very exciting to them. And so look for people that have that kind of disposable income, that are wooed by the glamour of it all. And there's probably a lot of other ways to do it, but that would just be my advice, would be what we've seen success.
And I think, also connections. That's where producers can come in, or stunt doubles, or, I'm trying to think of people we've known and talked to. They're like, oh, I know that person. It's great to get someone that in a project that's like, oh, I know that person. I've worked with this person before, this name before. So maybe that's just like some sleuthing on IMDb Pro to find producers that have worked with the actor that you want before, and maybe approach them and see if they would be interested in coming on. Maybe pitch to them first, because they might have a back door that goes around agents and management so that you can get directly to talent. If you're in a situation as a filmmaker where you're like, whoa, 20% of $1 million feels like a lot. I don't know if I can raise that, or even I don't know if I can even raise like $25,000 for a deal, on a lower budget. There could be a way to find, again, one of those, build your producing team, and maybe it has to do with, finding someone if you're really going after a specific actor. Maybe there's a way to kind of get around, kind of go around the management of it all, because they're the ones that are going to kind of put up the gate that you have to kind of like send your pay to play deal through. So if you can get a talent really excited about a project, then there's a potential that you could get an LOI or something like that, without having to broker a deal. But again, that takes kind of more of like the networking. That still takes a while, because like a cold email, can take you somewhere, but it's kind of about the networking too. It's kind of, are you playing a little bit more? Are you playing more of a qualitative game or a quantitative game? It's like, who are you as a filmmaker and what fits better for you? Is it pitching and raising money so that you have like exact steps to get somewhere? Or are you more the person that wants to work the room and see if you can get a producer, get a casting director interested that can get directly to that talent? It just depends on like, what do you think you're better at, and will take your project farther faster.
And it also depends on your budget tier. Probably most of the people in this room are not trying to raise $15 million. Godspeed. Like, I believe in you. It's really hard work, right? Even if you're just thinking about, let's say, $1 million movie or $500,000 movie, the same strategy can apply, but you're going to need a lot less money, and sometimes not any at all. You can, for a small indie film that has a really good budget, a really good script, you can call management, you can call people's reps and pitch a project to them and see if their talent is, call and have a conversation. Like, I'm, interested in Michelle Rodriguez. Like, what's she up to? What are her goals moving forward? What kind of projects is she looking to do? And just begin relationships with people. You'd be surprised at how many folks are just willing to have a conversation on the phone. That's something I think, like, it goes without saying that like people do business and they want to like make transactions with people that they trust. And so proving that you're a good person, even if you don't have a lot financially you can offer people, but you have a great script, it's like learning how to pitch yourself casually and not sound desperate. But if maybe you have a really valid reason why this actor would be great for this part, and I've seen people attach without any funds, attach, not set, but it can be done. And you can go shop their name around, and you can go use that to attach other actors. So it's all, it's all like scale and the scope of how they did your project. He's got like a different battle to fight than probably most people in this room, but the same strategy applies in different ways. You just get to like take a little bit of the equity out, like the smaller your budget. I just encourage everyone to make the best on you can with the least amount of resources you had, especially when you're first starting out. Because otherwise you get really stalled. You could be pitching a product for like a decade and wake up and be like, wow, what happened? And nothing moved forward. So if you come up to these, these roadblocks where you feel like you're trying to bust down a wall that's not moving, I would encourage you to rethink and say, is there a way I can strip this script back? And maybe I don't actually need 15 million. Maybe I could do it for 2.5 and it could be non-union. And, then you take your fringes out of it and you still have your main actor, but it's a different tier of a name. And, maybe you don't need a pre-sale because you found equity people who were they believed in you and they believed in the project. They had other reasons why they wanted to do it. And replaced all these special effects with practical effects. So there's, creative ways, sometimes bringing on a new reader, a new voice, a new producer to look at your script and think about, well, could this be like a single location now? Could you do a creative rewrite to restructure? And you may have to back into those results sometimes, but starting small is not a bad thing. And all of those steps, once you realize like how the puzzle fit together and it's not real, not opaque of a process, you just start to like put the pieces together. But don't get intimidated by the whole process. It can be really daunting.
At what point in you guys' career did you feel like was the turning point? So you see how you said for like 10 years ago, you guys were like, hey, this is an idea. And then you guys started doing short films and commercials and things like that. Like and then later on, it's like, hey, I got 1.5 million, for a budget.
Yeah.
Like, where was did that make you guys realize like, hey, this is it. We're good.
It's a good question. That's a great question. I feel like the turning point, well, at least for me, was during that accelerator program that we were a part of, where we were learning to be creative entrepreneurs in business and really think about film production from a business standpoint. And that just helped us with pitching to raise the money for our first feature, because we were able to really know what we were talking about with business folks, people that care about the numbers, and we were able to appeal to the creative part of the projects, but also to the business side of the projects, and really be able to talk numbers with people that talk numbers. We were able to speak a different language. We went from kind of speaking like creative language to speaking business language, and then kind of marrying those two. And that's really what brought our first feature to the forefront, and and allowed us to really focus on that and get it produced. And then that feature, Imogene, A Song for Imogene, became our calling card film that has opened so many doors for this next project. So it has proven, it's kind of been our proof of concept for us as filmmakers. People watch the film, they find out what we made it for, and they're like, whoa, if you could make this for $200,000, what could you do with $2 million? What could you do with $20 million? And so it really helps. So if I can really reverse engineer and say, for me, A Song for Imogene and having our first feature under our belt was a big turning point. If I can reverse engineer how that happened, it was really turning on that business savvy as a creative, and figuring out how to marry those things, and like, everything that we're talking about. It's like the 10 years ago when we were actresses, and thinking about producing or raising even, $50,000 to make a project was like, whoa, that I can't even imagine trying to do that. Where would I begin? So that's kind of what it was for me. I don't know if you feel like there's other points you want to identify.
And I think it comes with having people's real money and them believing that you can do something with it. And when that's ready to happen to us, it really validated that what we were doing wasn't just for us, and that people believed in it. Not that money is the answer, but investors who buy into your vision and they believe in you and not just the creative work that you're putting out on screen. That really helped for me to feel like it was bigger than just the two of us. But it's always been this kind of organic process where we're just trusting our gut and the universe is leading us. And I'm not sure that's like, I hope you all can take from that. I don't know how tapped in you all are, but it really feels like a huge part of our journey is just listening to your gut and knowing that the right people are around you and to open your eyes. And I mean, the woman who was our executive producer for imaging, she's not a financier. She'd never done this before. She isn't indie filmmaking. She wasn't someone that you would typically pitch to. She wasn't like a studio executive. She owned a restaurant. She's a lawyer. It's just, she was like a business mentor to us. And we didn't even think about pitching to her. She pitched herself to us. It was like, it was really magical. We lost a different investor and kind of lost a little heart, but I was like, I'm going to stay positive. She asked me how things were going, and our big investor had dropped out. I texted her and I was like, well, the Seaton Smart campaign's coming to a close. Like, we raised 150% of our goal. Like, things are going really well, but we did lose our other good caster. But I'm remaining positive. I feel like the right person's going to come. And she texted me back as these little, the 3 little bubbles. And she said, well, I could be a big investor. And she sent like emoji. And I like sent a screenshot to Erica and I'm like, is this about to happen? Is this how it goes? It's really this casual. And we went to lunch with her like that week. And I remember her saying like, well, what do you need, to get it green with it? $75,000. She's like, I like needed numbers. How about 80, Caddy? It's like, that sounds great. I have this video of me and Erica. We got in the car after lunch and we're like, did that just happen? And I'm like recording it. And Erica's like, you really kept your cool. I did not feel like cool. And that woman, she is just incredible. She's like become part of our company. Over the years, she's invested equity in Honey Heck Mountain, building our capacity to continue creating films because she sees what we're doing, not just as creative filmmakers, but as women in the industry who are opening the doors for other women in the industry. And she came up where people weren't helping, as like a woman in law. It was really tough. People weren't opening the door for her. And she said, I'm going to be figgy by the time you get your fig break. Let me help expedite the process for you. And that wasn't premeditated. We just encountered her, through just the connections. Like, my husband used to be the kitchen manager at her restaurant. It's like a decade ago, so it's not like we're sitting on the internet, like looking at who we're going to cold call because they'll definitely invest. It's like, be a good person, show up, be authentic, be yourself, ask the right questions, take people to lunch, learn from them, but without the thought that biggies are going to help propel your career forward, do good and the right people are going to find you who are going to believe in you too. And when it starts coming together and then you're on the right path and you're like, cool, we'll keep going.
We did send the cold emails. They did that. They never were. And also now speaking from being in a place where we get a lot of the cold emails, it's so hard to pay attention to them, when you're producing and doing 1,000 other things. So now I kind of see, when I receive the email, I kind of see myself from the other side. I'm kind of like on the other side of it now. And I'm like, I understand why these didn't work. It's not that someone is too good for you or they're just ignoring it. It's just they don't have the time or capacity to like get pitched through an email. It's so much more effective to have a face-to-face conversation with someone and let those relationships develop organically. So you could spend an hour writing the best email. You're like, this is great. It's catchy, it has this, it's not too long, and then you send it and you spend an hour doing it and someone is like, wow, I don't have time to read that, or I don't have time to really get pitched to over email, and then it gets marked unread and it dies forever in the inbox, you know what I mean? So just kind of be aware of that there are places where to put your time and energy because that is valuable. Your time as a creative entrepreneur is very valuable. So think about where it's best utilized. Is probably not writing, 20 cold emails to send to this email address, and one of those you might get a response from an assistant or something like that, but is it really going to push the project forward? Is it better for you to take that time and maybe go to a networking event or to like, buy someone lunch and just pick their brain and maybe see, I saw you worked on this project, can I hear about that? Can I take you out to lunch and just hear about your experience on that project and just pick their brain? And there might be some kind of like commonality that you discover through that. So it really is so much of networking and who you know in this industry. So I just encourage all of you to like do things like this. Come to Tryon, meet people. You never know.
Could you speak to us a little bit about how the finding distribution for imaging had been, and how like marketing and how producing life is when the project is made and like you're putting it out into the world?
Yeah. Yeah. The distribution for imaging started, and I'm going to tell you what we did, and then afterwards we'll probably tell you what we would do a little differently. It started during the post-production process, and we brought on a producer's rep to help us with all of that we'd never done before. And so he had the law background. He also served as like our production lawyer, but had relationships with different distributors who took interest in indie films, and he helped get the film in front of them. So when you were ready for a world premiere, right after that, we premiered at the Genedata's Film Festival in Bentonville. He started sending screeners and DVDs, I think, to many distributors. Oh, yeah, HBO.
TVDs, anyone ever got the Blu-rays, but we made them.
Yes, Barbies. He had a portal where we could check in and see, did Netflix like it? Pass. Not looking good for us. Did HBO like it? We don't have anyone in this movie. Pass. We could see the reasons why to pass. It was interesting. Out of that list, we got 3 offers, and we decided to sit on all of them because we were about to screen at like 1,600 festivals, some of them like Atlanta Film Festival, where there are distributors present, and the offers weren't amazing. They were just kind of standard. So we thought, we'll see what else is out there and what else happens. During that process, it was about 1.5 years that we were on the festival circuit. We got other offers outside of him that just came to us because we would be on those lists of films that were programmed at competition at places like Atlanta or Croatia, or like, something comes up in the trades that Imogene is one of the films programmed at this festival, and people would reach out to us from those companies and they'd say, I'd love a screener link. And I've got other offers that way as well.
At the end, we also worked with Tryon, which was part of that. I would suggest having, we hired publicists leading up to our world premiere, people who were able to go get us on Rotten Tomatoes, get the film reviewed for us, and that did cost us money, but it was, part of the budget working to get the film out there. So like, once you have your get it as a can, get it edited budget, remember that you're also going to need money to prepare your film to be seen, to make the most of that. So the fact that we were able to get a few reviews, things that like when people, Googled the film, it looked good, and the reviews were legitimate. It was just, we had someone strategizing with us of, we should send the film to these specific critics because we know that they would lean into a project like this. We're not going to send it to this person that likes, they budget action movies with Tom Cruise in it, because that's not your film. So they kind of hand-picked our critics and the people to review the project so that it would perform well. So that was something else leading into our world premiere, that we engaged with publicists for about a 2-week period. I think it was 2 to 4 weeks. So that's something else that I want to tag on to that was part of that journey that I think was also critical. We still use quotes from those articles still on a lot of our screenshots for social media and things like that we put out there. We still use a lot of that. So I feel like that was a really, really valuable part of that puzzle.
Yeah. And as we were closing our festival run, which really did close last October, Imaging was supposed to screen at Tryon last year. And so we're bringing it back out of the vault for y'all last night. But we closed our festival run in Los Angeles last October, and then started talking about which of these offers are we going to take. And we had Zoom interviews with the distributors. They kind of would pitch themselves to us, tell us what they liked about the movie, or about us as filmmakers, talk about their marketing strategy. And we were able to negotiate because we had that producer's rep. He would redline contracts in our favor if there was, a percentage that we've been trying to get as much for us as possible as filmmakers. Can ultimately, at the end of the day, it came down to like 2 of the 3 offers. And we decided, like, from an optics standpoint, it really went back and forth as a team. I mean, for a little while. It was like, should we self-distribute? Should we just get an aggregator for this movie? Because really, I'd done my research and knew that these indie distributors are basically aggregating your movie and they're not going to do any marketing for you. I knew that. I really did. But it was more about what we needed to make the next project happen, and that getting international or worldwide distribution for your film, just hearing that sounds better to people that you're going to be pitching to for your first feature that got distributed worldwide. It's like something you can roll off your tongue. It's like, oh, legitimacy. Oh, okay. Oh, you're with these people. Oh, and they look at that slate and they can see what other projects that distributor has put out, and that just gives you credibility. And so at the end of the day, be really honest with you, we decided to distribute with Buffalo 8, and we did it because the rest of their slate complemented the visual tone of the imaging, and the other, Freestyle and Good Deed and the other people that had given us offers, you kind of look at their slate and it's a little like all over the place. They had with Christmas movies and horror films, and the key art didn't quite feel like this prestige drama that we had created, and so I would take that into consideration. And the distribution process is hell. It's the worst part. Delivery, I should say, the worst. I mean, getting the band back together, as Erica says, to like do all of the technical specs and, give them everything and meet all your contracts and your music rights, everything. It just takes months of work. It's so not rewarding. And at the end of the day, to have them just kind of like throw it up on their slate and then have a marketing call with you that lasts like 25 minutes and then basically be like, here's a spreadsheet of all these great social media ideas that you can do yourself. And you're like, cool, is this why we're paying you 25% for me to go do all the work anyway? And that really basically is what you're set up for. So just have your expectations on the ground. No shade on Buffalo 8. They're all like that, right? Put them on the floor. If we could go back, I would probably just get an aggregator. What do you think?
So hard to know because the wheels were already turning on our next feature. We had met a producer who attached himself at the world premiere of A Song for Imogene. We had the back pocket pitch. We had the script. I'd finished a draft of the script, knowing that we wanted to go out on the festival circuit with Imogene with a script and a pitch ready for the next film in case we were able to have a casual conversation with someone. We wanted to make sure if we pitched the idea, they were like, I would love to read it. And we weren't like, and I go home and I'm like, like pumping out this really poorly done, act 3 of something. So, we had that ready. He read the script. It took a couple months, and we thought it was a dead lead, but he did get back to us and he said, I got a lot of scripts, after the festival circuit, and I liked yours the best. Like, what can we do? And he's been with the project ever since. And so we were already in kind of turning our wheels into that next project that's like a $5 million, thriller. And so there was also a level of how much more energy and time do we have as independent filmmakers to invest in this distribution? That was another part of it, is we were like, at least, the self distribution, doing your own distribution, putting all of that energy in, it's like we have so little time to divide into all these buckets, and we really, really wanted to put a lot of our time and energy into the next feature to make sure that it didn't die in the water, basically. So that maybe aggregating, maybe just getting someone to do all those back end things, put it on the platforms, because we're basically doing all of the marketing ourselves. So splitting the revenue with a distributor feels kind of like, I guess we're paying to like be on your website and be able to say we have a distributor. If that feels like it's worth 25% or whatever percentage you land on, then I think that's something to think about. But it kind of just depends on what your goals are. Are your goals to like really make this film make money for you and recoup and maybe use that money to make the next project, or is it an optics thing? Really depends on like what's serving you next. Because I encourage all of you to make your first feature and then use that to make your second feature,
And because we had angel investors on the first, I think they would love to make their money back, but that's not why they signed on the line. There's not as much pressure to see what the returns are going to be. But I think what Erica basically said and what I would say is that if we went back, we would just aggregate the film. So you pay someone to get it up on Prime, all those places. Um, and then you do the marketing yourself because that's what we're doing anyway. We're just now splitting the profits in perpetuity forever with a distributor to do what an aggregator would do. So they're kind of a glorified aggregator with like a brand behind them. And if your return is going to be so little, you really don't want to wire it down, So that would be my advice.
It still sounds cool to be able to say, yeah, our film is available. It's available on Amazon Prime. That still gets people hit up. You can watch it on Tubi. It's like you can still say all of those things, You don't have like the worldwide distribution of it all, I guess, but you can still say it's available to these places, and that still legitimizes your project for people because it's available for mass consumption. It's not just available kind of, at a festival or like, let me send you a private screener on Vimeo. It still kind of legitimizes you as a filmmaker in this way.
There's
So you can still use
right?
that.
You could be like available for streaming, parentheses Prime, and people are like, oh, they don't know one by the other. Sometimes that's just how I talk about imaging. I'm like, streaming window opened in July, parentheses Prime. I'm not like was acquired by Buffalo Lay for distribution because depending on who you talk to, that doesn't mean anything to them either, So it's all about optics at this budget level, and thankfully you're doing a genre film, so you're more likely to get the niche distributor that's going to care. So that's good for you. But yeah, I just keep your expectations on the ground and know that like the best part about all of it is really the festival we're on because you get to be in person with people like y'all and have community around the film and have people, you get to experience how they experience your work. And then once it goes out on streaming, it's kind of like lonely. Like you're not there in person to like feel anything. And so then it becomes like it's literally like dusty on the shelf a little bit, unless you get on Instagram and say some things or send some emails or, host a screening. We retained theatrical rights to our film. That was something that we negotiated, which you can do if you have like a plan to take it on the road or you've got like a really brilliant marketing strategy around it. That's awesome. But we were just ready to move on, not like in a sad way. We just have other things we want to do. And it's a full-time job marketing a film. That's why you have distributor partners that as indie filmmakers, they're kind of like just capitalizing on knowing that you need that, I think. So just be wary. Definitely don't bite at the first offer. And there's a couple resources I'll tell you. The distribution report card is something that you can all check out. Real-time reviews, real-time. It's a scoring system. AV or A, B, C, D, E, F. Don't ever sign up anybody that's in the F category, and you can read real life experiences and why people have scored the best way. And then also the distribution playbook, which was put out by Emily Bass and Mark Dupas and a couple people like that. Read that front to back just to know what you're up against. But resources like that are kept up to date and they can help make sure you're not signing a predatory deal that you're going to really regret. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Vanessa.
Maybe you'll tell anything that we're talking about? Yes.
Could you talk more about aggregators and which ones you used or what you found to that?
We did not use an aggregator. Did not. I'm saying that if I could go back, I think we might have done it because essentially the really like indie friendly distributors are basically like glorified alligators. Is what I'm trying to say. They don't put a lot of effort into marketing your film. They're not going to put a ton of P&A, and they might charge you for it, but I don't see the fruits of it anywhere. And I've heard this time and time again with other filmmakers who want to commiserate about distribution. We just in our back over here, I was talking to someone, he's like, I don't know any indie filmmaker who's had a great experience with a distributor. It's kind of like just how it goes for us. And so now there's the opportunity to just work with an aggregator instead. And then you retain all the residual rights. You're just paying them a small fee up front to do all the metadata, the tagging, like the technical specs of getting it out on these platforms. But then all of the return, all of the rights come back to you. I will say if your film is SAG, you're going to need to have an accountant who's doing all the residuals for you and things like that. The distributor would handle that for you. But for our movie, it was a small, non-union indie, you know, like non-IONC, like there were no residual payments. And so, I mean, I don't know if we're in complete agreement that we would go to an aggregator, but I just feel at this point, I do all the marketing myself anyway. So why are we splitting the profits with the distributor who's supposed to be marketing the film?
I guess my question more specifically is which RV maybe would you have gone with?
I don't know because I didn't go down the route of like deciding on one. I can pull up my notes like later today and maybe find you and like I think Nick Westfall like gave us a few.
Yeah, I think there's probably some email correspondence with other filmmakers who were suggesting it, and then we just kind of decided that we just wanted to go ahead and go with a distributor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try to find you and like look up some notes from like 2 years ago when we were making this decision. I don't have, they're not like off the top of my head because we didn't go down that road, but yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
When you were first starting out, like, did you ever have those kind of roadblocks where you didn't really know how to talk to people or approach people, and like, and then where you are now, like, just kind of being comfortable talking about and having all this experience and stuff? Like, how did you navigate that, like, from when you first started out to where you are now?
I'm gonna take that. What do you think? All that pops into my head is that we've kind of always been an open book. And I think that's what created trust and transparency of why the right people, I'm working through this answer in front of you in real time, but, 10 years ago, we would have never walked into a pitch with like a studio executive. We just wouldn't have done something that felt like we had no idea how to do it. And when those opportunities did come, it was like just staying true to who we are. And it's almost like the right conversations always happen at the right exact moment. And I never really felt totally out of my depth and out of like in the band in a way where I could stay afloat. I'm always a little scared, and that's a healthy place to be. I think that you're always constantly learning. But I don't know, like maybe we can tell him about Christine. That's what pops into my head. It's like the
Yeah.
all chewed up about our first like real
Pitch. I mean, when we were pitching a song for Imogene, originally we did a budget that was like a modified low range, and we were pitching like a 600, 750. Okay, so that was like 650 or 750.
750,000.
Yeah. And Michelle, one of our producers, had kind of broken down a budget for us, and we were like, okay, this is the budget of the film, and we were going to go pitch it, and got the feedback that was kind of budgetary no man's land for an indie film because it wasn't enough money to bring on a name to protect that investment for people and your investors, but but it was also like too big for a friends and family kind of budget, like a crowdfunding budget, so you were going to need equity to protect, but it was too low to bring on a name to protect that equity. So basically people were just going to lose their money on the film, was kind of the feedback that we had gotten. But so that's why we ended up deciding, we don't want to name it this film. If we want to do, we can make this for less. We basically put on our indie grits hats, and we were like, we can definitely make this for less than that and figure out how to do that. And we did. But on the journey of kind of our modified low, between $500,000 and $1 million budget, we did pitch to a studio executive in New York. And we were so excited about it. I remember that. I remember that there was a little bit of imposter syndrome, but also excitement. And it was in like the doldrums of COVID. So it was a Zoom pitch, which is always kind of a bummer. But, we got there and we had prepared and like pulled out the crystals, and we were like, had like made sure that our backgrounds looked good. We were in like different places. We were at your house. I was at my house. We were like standing at our computers, we were like ready to talk to her, and she kind of got on and made a pitch.
Extremely nervous.
Yeah.
And me, the actor, and me like wanting to have a script and rehearse to make it feel really candid. And Erica's like, I'm gonna wing it. She does so much better back then. That was our style. But I do remember feeling like those shoes I was stepping into were really big.
Yeah.
So scary. But she was really kind. I mean,
she stopped us partway through the pitch and she said, I want to stop you. And we were like, she's gonna be like, I have another thing or something. And she's like, you're doing a really good job. I'm enjoying this. Keep going. And she just like was encouraging to us, and so that was really amazing. But definitely there was a lot of knowing and just believing that we were legitimate before we felt that way. You kind of like have to lead yourself into that a lot of times. And I definitely felt that way, on that pitch where I was like, I'm just going to say I'm the writer director, that's just like, you get labeled as a first time filmmaker, even though you've made 17 shorts when you're endeavoring to make your first feature film. And that could feel like a big gut punch and a big step backward, but you just have to kind of like own it and own the room in his way.
And she will disagree, but I really do write down what I say to people, or at least things that, if I'm not used to talking about, I write it down, I type it out, and I read it, and I don't like practice it, but I just become comfortable saying it in a few different ways so that I don't get all tripped up and I start talking really fast and people are like, oh my gosh, she's so nervous. So it's like, that's the actor in me that just needs to rehearse a little bit. If I'm talking about, the first time I was talking to somebody about talent investment, I was Googling stuff. I was like, Google Academy, hello. Like, how do you think we're self-taught indie filmmakers? You gotta like look it all up. You gotta feel like you really holistically understand if you're nervous, there's a reason. You don't know the material. So like learn your lines on your script. Figure out what it is you're talking about. It'll make you more comfortable.
And figure out who you're talking to.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have the same pitch in the script for everyone you're talking to. You have to kind of be able to realize like who wants to talk to you, who wants to talk numbers, who just wants to like talk creative, and you kind of just like, slide the pitch in where you can. It's like you have to be able to also like read people and figure out like how do I kind of like pivot and adjust depending on who I'm talking to. That's a big part of it as well. Is it appropriate? Am I gonna come off as kind of the like hyper filmmaker gopher that's like talking about my film, and I'm like so nervous, do I need to kind of like take a breath and just kind of like talk about something else and then like segue into this, or is it like, do I really have 60 seconds with this person, or do maybe I have like much longer and they're going to want to go to coffee and kind of get to know me? It's like it just really depends. You have to kind of be a little bit of a chameleon in that way. Yeah. Just help you. Okay. Know that we are all there together, I'm sure. And we're done this. We're short on time, so probably like one more question. Would you say? Yeah.
If you had to start over with imaging from the ground up, how would you market your film?
Go into detail. What exactly do you need for this answer?
More like marketing strategies.
If we had to start over, like what would we do differently as marketing?
Like aside from the festival run, how would you market your film to get people to see it?
I mean, definitely set aside a budget to help with that, to help support that, I would say. Because if they had like the time and the budget to really think creatively about marketing it, we probably would have like maybe come up with some clever ideas about like fun ways to kind of like get butts in seats in this way. But because we're also running a production company, we were sometimes just like coming in hot to a festival, you know what I mean? So definitely making sure you have like a publicist, at least for your world premiere, that definitely took a big burden off of us to help with marketing. But I would say think about what type of film you're making. What is some like clever, I mean, people that are making genre films, it's like, what's some fun, funky kind of A24 style marketing that you can like come up with and maybe like see what they're doing, you know what I mean? As far as like, don't be afraid to use social media and use virality to serve your project. That's the age that we're living in now. And it took us a long time to like admit that, content creation was like, coming on board, to the film industry and all of that and vertical things and whatever. So, but that is just the way of the world right now. So thinking about, are there like people out on social media and influencers who would like get excited about your film, that want to kind of like push it to their, their following and things like that? Are there fun ways when you're actually at the festival to kind of like drop some like interesting things you could make, that have to do with your project? Just depends on like the genre, and is there like a fun thing? I remember there was a gal at Carrie, who had like her postcards for her film, which she was carrying around to get people to come to her screening. And it was about Korean beauty standards. And her postcards were printed on face masks, like those kind of flat, like drugstore face masks you can buy. And she was handing them out. And I'm like, that makes me want to go see this, you know? So there's like clever and creative ways, but definitely I think you have to at this point in our industry kind of like endeavor into the scary world of social media and just kind of like figure out how am I gonna do this and create an image that I'm proud of, you know, that feels cohesive, that feels professional, but also could reach people, you know, maybe it'd be worth it, like I said, to build some budget into there for marketing just to give yourself time to like think about that. And or maybe collaborate with some people or just know that like the journey is never over with marketing a film.
The first thing you said is what I would latch on to. They say you should have, this is so depressing. They say you should have exactly what you spent on the film for the marketing budget of the film. So you're doing $5,000 short, you get $5,000 to market it, maybe not for a short film. $500,000 movie, $500,000 goes into marketing to make it a success. I don't know how that makes sense numbers wise. Obviously, that's not attainable for an indie film. We didn't have any marketing budget. And so what does that mean? It means it's me doing the marketing. Do I have the capacity to have, I mean, I have to be paid to our production company, you know, so if I could do it over again, I probably, like Erica said, not just some funds, I would raise money to hire someone else or to pay me, could probably pay me to do it because I'm closest to the material. And it's kind of fun if you're being paid, right? It's like, as long as it's sustaining you, like that's great. It's not bad to pay yourself to do something for your project and to budget for that because it does need to be done. And what happens, unfortunately, is like Imogene's out in the world. The next project is gearing up. And I just, as a human, as a mom and a filmmaker and someone that runs their own production company, I do not have the capacity to touch it every day. And so she kind of sits over there being her own little great movie that deserves to be seen. And it's like maybe once a week I have time to think about Imogene, poor little Imogene, you know? And if I was like paid to do it, I think we'd be having in-person screenings and we'd be like selling tickets and we'd be retaining the rights to ourselves, you know, we'd be doing like a lot more grassroots. We'd be capitalizing on that, but because we're passionate about getting the next project off the ground and there's no budget allocated towards that, it really just becomes more difficult to prioritize.
Yeah, you need time to think creatively and brainstorm about ways to get eyes on things because people are just inundated with video content these days and like how to divide their time. So that would definitely be number one is like build time for yourself to go like figure out who else is doing it and who is doing it and what's working for them and then just kind of like take ideas and like build a marketing plan that way, but don't be afraid to be non-traditional. That's what I would say for sure.
Thank you all so much. I think we're out of time. We'll be here for the rest of the weekend and look forward to talking to all of you about your projects. And thanks for having us Tryon. I hope y'all got something good from us.
I think they need to have notebooks and pens next time. So